Hello and welcome. In today's video, we're going to be discussing a little bit about carbon chemistry. So we know that carbon is the most abundant element inside living things. And this carbon can be used to create a wide variety of different substances and macromolecules inside the body. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So carbon. Carbon atoms have 4 electrons in their outer shell that can form incredibly strong covalent bonds. And if you remember correctly, covalent bonds are the strongest type. Carbon can also go ahead to other carbon atoms and bond with them, making unlimited carbon chains with single, double, or even triple bonds. This allows carbon to go ahead and form millions of different types of molecules depending on what situation they're in and what is needed. So macromolecules. So macromolecules are giant molecules formed by carbon joining with other carbon atoms and other elements via covalent bonds. So macromolecules, some of them are polymers. So polymers are formed by the polymerization or combination where monomers, the small units, join to form polymers, the larger units, via covalent bonds. So think of it like with Legos. The monomers are these small Lego bricks, whereas the polymers are whatever you go ahead and build with them. So for example, depending on what you wanted to go ahead and build, you could go ahead and use the same Lego bricks to create a car, a submarine, a house, nature, I don't know, world's your mango. So as you can see here, depending on the arrangement and how you put these together, that's going to go ahead and influence what is made. So monomers, one, poly, many. So polymers are made of many monomers. The first major carbon compound we're going to discuss are carbohydrates. So carbohydrates' main function is to go ahead and store short-term energy. The elements found in carbohydrates are carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And it's often in a ratio of 1 carbon to every 2 hydrogen and 1 oxygen. Now the monomers, or building blocks of carbohydrates, are called monosaccharides. So mono meaning one, saccharide meaning sugar. So monosaccharides, simply put, just mean single sugars. Meanwhile, the polymers are the carbohydrates themselves. So these polymers include polysaccharides, which are 3 or more monosaccharides put together. Some examples of this include cellulose, which is an energy storage form in plants, and glycogen, which is an energy storage form in animals. So remember, monomers, monosaccharide, single sugar, polymer, polysaccharide, many sugars. Up next, we're going to go ahead and discuss lipids. So the main function of lipids are long-term energy storage, protection, insulation, and buoyancy. So long-term energy storage are your main structure and function for your lipids. These are, think like fat, things of that nature. They're used for storing energy long-term. Now, for the sake of this class, there are no monomers and there are no polymers. It's simply a combination of different elements in different ways. So the elements that are found in lipids include carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. Some examples include waxes, triglycerides, hormones, and phospholipids. So like we said earlier, the function here, it can store energy long term, protect you, so think about where fat normally accumulates on a body. It accumulates in areas where you have a lot of organs or veins and arteries. So it kind of acts like a layer of squishy armor. Insulation, think blubber. In organisms animals that normally go ahead and live in frigid or cold areas. They have a thick layer of fat that goes ahead and helps them insulate and protect their bodies from the cold. And also buoyancy. Lipids, much like oils, tend to go ahead and float on water. So, the more lipids you have, the more buoyant you are. Now triglycerides. These are saturated versus unsaturated fatty acids. Saturated fatty acids have the maximum number of hydrogen atoms used. These are normally not that great for you. Whereas unsaturated fatty acids contain at least 1 carbon-carbon double bond, and they're liquids at room temperature. So, remember it like this. Your saturated fats are things like butter, which is normally not that great for you. Whereas unsaturated, this would be more like olive oil or other things of that nature. They tend to work with the body a little bit easier and are harder to go ahead and accumulate. Up next, we're going to be discussing nucleic acids. Nucleic acids store genetic information and are responsible for protein synthesis or creating proteins. The polymer in this case are the nucleic acids themselves, whereas the monomers are called nucleotides. So nucleotides are these small little bits that go ahead and build up to create your nucleic acids. Now, a nucleotide is comprised of a sugar, a phosphate, and a nitrogen base, being either adenine, thymine, guanine, or cytosine. You won't have to know that just yet, just giving you fair warning. So the elements found in nucleic acids include hydrogen, oxygen, carbon, and phosphorus or phosphates. And some great examples of nucleic acids include both DNA and RNA. Proteins. So proteins, once again, proteins are the polymers themselves. And the elements found inside proteins include nitrogen, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. The monomers of proteins are amino acids. Now in nature, there are more than 20 different amino acids that show up. And they are often comprised of a carboxyl group, an R group, an amino group, carbon, and hydrogen. Now proteins have a wide variety of different functions inside the body. They can control chemical reactions, regulate cell function, form bones and muscles, fight disease, and even transport substances. Some great examples of these include enzymes, which we'll be discussing later, and hemoglobin, which is found inside your blood. The last thing we're going to discuss today is protein structure. Proteins are joined together via peptide bonds, and there are three major shapes of proteins. You have primary, which is just the sequence of amino acids, so that would just be a combination of amino acids. Secondary, where these sequences have begun to go ahead and create three-dimensional folds in either a helix or kind of folded pattern. You have tertiary, where these things have kind of gone back and forth across themselves, making a glob or a sticky mess. And finally, we have quaternary, where the different globs go ahead and interact. Now, most of your high-level proteins are going to be in the tertiary or quaternary form. So with that, that is going to go ahead and cover the four major carbon compounds, as well as monomers and polymers. So if you have any questions, please go ahead and feel free to contact your instructor, and they'll go ahead and point you in the right direction. But anyway, thank you very much for your time, and until next time, you take care of yourself.